Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive, where we're going to explore something a little bit different.
Yeah, everyone always talks about John Archibald Wheeler and nuclear fission, but there's so much more to this guy.
Exactly. And we're going to use an essay by Jörg Schneeppert to guide us.
John Archibald Wheeler, architect of quantum mechanics, that's the one.
You got it. So we're going to be talking about multiple universes, information as the building block of reality. It's going to get a little crazy.
Oh, absolutely. If you like having your mind bent, you're in the right place.
I think we all are. So Jörg Schneeppert, he starts off by telling us about Wheeler's early life.
Yeah, seems like he was kind of born to be a physicist. Always curious, had a family that really supported his interests.
That always helps, right?
Absolutely. But it was at Johns Hopkins where things really took off for him. Schneeppert describes him diving deep into this brand new field at the time. Quantum mechanics.
I mean, can you imagine being a young physicist back then? Einstein, Planck, all these incredible discoveries happening.
It must have been so exciting. But here's where things get really interesting. Schneeppert really emphasizes the influence of Niels Bohr on Wheeler.
Another giant of physics, right?
Oh yeah, one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics. Wheeler worked with Bohr in Copenhagen, and that collaboration was huge.
Not just for their work together, but for Wheeler's whole approach to physics, Schneeppert says.
Exactly, and that led to some pretty major work on nuclear fission,
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal, right? Splitting the atom, all that energy.
It really shaped the 20th century, both the good and the bad.
Absolutely, and Schneeppert really lays out how crucial Wheeler and Bohr were in figuring out how it all worked.
But the thing about Wheeler is he didn't stop there. Schneeppert takes us into some even weirder territory.
Like these things called geons.
Ah, yes, geons. Now, these are still hypotheticals, gotta be clear about that. But Imagine this. The fabric of space-time itself, twisted and warped by energy, forming structures that act like particles.
But without any actual matter. It's like the universe is making its own building blocks out of pure energy.
Right. It's wild. And Schneeppert makes the point that even though we haven't actually found genes yet, the idea itself is just incredible.
Shows you how Wheeler was always pushing the boundaries.
Always asking what if. And that's something that still drives research in quantum gravity today.
Speaking of wild ideas, Schneeppert spends a good chunk of the essay talking about the many worlds interpretation.
Ah, yes. The multiverse. Now, this wasn't Wheeler's idea originally. It was his student, Hugh Everett, who came up with it.
But Wheeler really championed it, Schneeppert says.
And for good reason. I mean, imagine this. Instead of one universe, there's a whole multiverse, constantly splitting with every quantum measurement.
Well, every possible outcome, every choice, creates a new reality. There's a universe where I'm a rock star. I like that universe.
Maybe there is. But seriously, Schneeppert points out how controversial this idea is. It challenges our whole notion of a single reality, a single timeline.
Replaces it with infinite possibilities, a constantly branching out web of realities.
Yeah, and thanks in part to Wheeler's support, it's still something physicists are debating and discussing today.
Okay, so we've got splitting atoms, we've got hypothetical energy structures, we've got a multiverse. What else could there possibly be?
Well, get ready, because next up, we're diving into the Wheeler-DeWitt equation.
Oh, that sounds intimidating.
It is a bit of a mouthful, but Schneeppert does a great job of explaining it. Basically, Wheeler, along with Bryce DeWitt, were trying to do something huge.
Unify quantum mechanics and Einstein's general relativity. That's what Schneeppert says they were going for.
The two pillars of modern physics. And it's not easy. They seem to describe two completely different universes almost.
Okay, so like trying to fit two different puzzle pieces together that weren't made to go together.
Perfect analogy. And what's really wild is that this equation, this attempt to describe the whole universe as a quantum wave function, has a pretty crazy implication.
What's that?
Time, as we understand it, might not actually exist at the most fundamental level.
Hold on, time might not exist, but I definitely feel like time is passing right now.
Of course we experience time, but what if the universe isn't playing out on this linear timeline like we think?
Okay, my brain definitely needs a break. But this is just the beginning when it comes to John Archibald Wheeler, right?
Oh yeah, we're just getting started. Next time, we're going deeper into Wheeler's world, talking about information as the building block of reality, and his legacy as a teacher, too.
Can't wait. See you next time on The Deep Dive.
Welcome back. I hope you had a chance to ponder the mysteries of a timeless universe.
I think we need a few more episodes to really wrap our heads around that one.
Huh. Probably true. But Jörg Schneeppert, in his essay, he moves on to something really fascinating about Wheeler.
Yeah, his role as a teacher. Schneppat makes it clear that Wheeler wasn't just a brilliant physicist himself, he was incredible at inspiring others.
It's like Schneppat really emphasizes this. Wheeler created a whole culture of questioning, of really pushing the boundaries of what you could even think about in physics.
Not just finding the right answers, but finding the right questions.
Exactly. And that approach, it had this ripple effect, So many of Wheeler's students went on to do amazing things in physics.
Like those big names we mentioned before, Feynman, Thorne. They weren't just brilliant minds, they were shaped by Wheeler's way of thinking.
Schneppat even talks about how Wheeler encouraged them to be unconventional, to tackle problems from all these different angles.
To be playful almost.
Yeah, to explore those edges of what we know and not be afraid to be wrong.
And that kind of playful exploration, that's where breakthroughs happen.
All the time. Schneppat gives the example of Feynman's path integral formulation of quantum mechanics. It was totally radical at the time, a completely different way of looking at things.
And it wouldn't have happened without Wheeler's encouragement to, break the mold.
And Thorne, with his work on black holes and gravitational waves, that's another example, pushing the limits of what we thought was possible.
And it wasn't just about individual brilliance, right? Schneppat points out that Wheeler was really big on collaboration, too.
Oh, absolutely. He knew that to solve the toughest problems in physics, you needed to bring different minds together.
Diverse perspectives, different ways of approaching a problem.
And that's something we still need today, more than ever, I think.
Totally. Okay, so we've seen how Wheeler's ideas and his teaching shaped generations of physicists, but Schneppat also talks about how good Wheeler was at communication.
Yeah, not just with other scientists, but with a wider audience, too.
Like, he could take these super complex physics concepts and make them understandable to anyone.
It's true. I remember reading his book, A Journey into Gravity and Space-Time, and he's talking about black holes and all this stuff, but it's like, you don't need a PhD to follow along.
Schneppat mentions that Wheeler loved using analogies, everyday language, to explain these mind-bending ideas.
He didn't see science as this exclusive club. It was a journey of discovery that everyone could be a part of.
I love that. Making science accessible to everyone, helping people understand these incredible discoveries.
Exactly. And Schneppat points out something else that's really interesting. Wheeler wasn't afraid to ask the big philosophical questions, too.
So it wasn't just about how the universe worked, but what it all meant.
Yeah, the deeper implications of these discoveries. Like, Schneppat talks about how Wheeler was really interested in the nature of the quantum world and the role of observation.
Okay, now we're getting back into trippy territory.
Yeah.
So are you saying that just by looking at something, by measuring it, we might actually be affecting it?
That's the idea. It's a radical departure from the classical view of a universe that just exists independently of us.
Like, we're not just passive observers. We're actually participating in creating reality.
Wheeler called it the participatory universe, and Schneppat explains how this idea really forces us to rethink our place in the cosmos.
Wow. It's like looking in a mirror and realizing that the mirror is looking back at you, and somehow you're both shaping what the other sees.
I like that analogy. And from this idea of a participatory universe, Schneppat takes us to one of Wheeler's most mind-blowing concepts, it from bit.
Ah, yes. The idea that the universe is fundamentally built on information.
Not just matter and energy, but information all the way down. Schneppat explains how every physical it comes from these fundamental bits, these yes-no choices that make up reality.
So instead of a giant machine, the universe is more like a giant computer, constantly processing information.
That's a great way to put it. And Schneppat emphasizes how this it from bit idea connects to so much of Wheeler's other work.
His fascination with quantum measurement, the participatory universe,
Yeah.
It all points to information as this key ingredient.
And it's not just some abstract concept either. Schneppat points out that it has real implications for fields like quantum computing, quantum information theory.
It's like Wheeler anticipated our digital age, where information is everything.
Totally. So before we jump into the last part of our exploration, let me ask you this. If the universe is made of information, what does that mean for us? For consciousness?
That's a big one. Are we just complex arrangements of information processing? Or is there something more to it? I guess we'll have to keep exploring those questions in part 3. Well, here we are, the final part of our deep dive into the mind of John Archibald Wheeler.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? Guided by Jurgo Schneppat, of course, and his really insightful essay.
Seriously, from splitting atoms to a universe made of information, Schneppat takes us on quite a ride.
But as we wrap things up here, I think it's important to take a step back,
Yeah.
Think about the big picture, Wheeler's lasting impact.
Right, because it's more than just specific discoveries, right? It's like Schnepphat argues that Wheeler changed the way we see the universe.
Totally. It's like he shifted our perspective. We went from this view of the universe as particles and forces to this idea of a dynamic system all driven by information.
And that from bit idea, it's at the heart of that shift, right? Like Schnepphat keeps reminding us, it's not just a way we describe the universe, it might be the universe itself.
Yeah, information as the fundamental building block of reality. It's a pretty wild concept, and it's still sparking all this debate, all this research in physics, computer science, even philosophy.
And it's amazing how ideas Wheeler was talking about decades ago are still so relevant today.
Schnepphat even connects Wheeler's work to some of the most cutting-edge stuff happening right now.
Like quantum computing.
Exactly. The idea that we can harness quantum mechanics to process information in completely new ways, that comes straight out of Wheeler's way of thinking.
So are you saying that the fact that we might be on the verge of this quantum computing revolution with all its potential is partly thanks to John Archibald Wheeler?
You could definitely argue that. His work laid the groundwork for that kind of thinking.
That's incredible. But Schnepphat also points out that it's not just about practical applications, it's also about a mindset, a scientific mindset.
Yeah, that curiosity, that creativity, that willingness to challenge what everyone else thinks is true.
Wheeler taught us to ask those big questions, to not be afraid of the unknown.
And to break down the walls between different fields, too. He saw the connections between everything.
And Schnepphat's right. That message, it's more important than ever today, I think.
Oh, absolutely. We're facing these huge challenges, and we need people who can think differently, who can connect the dots, who aren't afraid to challenge the status quo.
And those are all things that John Archibald Wheeler was all about. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think we should all try to take a little bit of Wheeler's spirit with us.
That sense of wonder, that drive to explore,
And if you're feeling inspired to learn more, definitely check out Yorgo Schnepphat's essay. It's a fantastic starting point.
Wheeler's legacy, it's like this gift, this invitation to keep exploring, to keep asking questions.
So keep those minds open, keep diving deep, and until next time, happy exploring, everyone.